Well, thanks for logging on to another edition of the Buyer's Guide. In this video we're going to be looking at a ground bait which I've used on and off for about 3 years now on a wide variety of venues, and that ground bait is Baitech's Pro Natural Bream. Well, regular viewers to this channel, those that have been around right since this channel ever started, will know and will have seen me using this ground bait, and I know a lot of you have used it as well. It's part of the Pro Natural range from Baitech, and it's one that I've used for about 3 years now. I've used it on its own, and I've also used it quite often with Pro Natural Dark, which is another ground bait in this range that we're going to be looking at in a future video. Now, this ground bait is what I would consider a bit of an old school mix. Now, I'm saying that because I know a lot of viewers out there are my sort of age and older, and one of the strongest smells, or one of the strongest ingredients I remember from fishing as a kid within ground baits, was the smell of brasem. Now, that is what this mix is all about, in my opinion. It's not a fish meal mix, it's a cereal based mix, so it's, you know, it's one that they use a lot on the continent, and I tend to use it a lot when I'm targeting roach and skimmers and bream as well, on more less commercial type venues. But obviously Baitech are a very well established company, and their packaging will hopefully give us some clues as regards what this mix is all about. So let's take a look at the packaging now and just see what we can learn from it. Well, as you can see, it's a nice big bag. This is actually a 1.5 kilo bag. That's clearly stated there in the top right hand corner. Okay, so 1.5 kilo bags. Pro Natural Bream, as it says. Pro Natural is a range, okay, so if you're going out looking for this ground bait, just make sure that you're going to pick up the right one, because there's Pro Natural Dark. You know, there are quite a few in the range and different versions of each one as well, so just be careful when you're picking it up off the shelf. The key word is there for you, right across the middle: Bream. Pro Natural Bream mix. Okay, so we've obviously got photographs of bream on the front, so that's obviously going to give you an idea of what it's all about. We've got a bit of information here of what it's designed for and what it's designed with sweet brasem. As soon as you open this bag, you will get that smell of brasem, that sweet, almost kind of, it's obviously very similar to what they use on the continent as what everyone calls caramel. It's the same sort of flavouring. Perfect for feeders or feeder fishing. Ground bait for bream, skimmers and hybrids. Okay, now a lot of you will have seen me use this on certainly in Ireland as well, so it's quite a very, you know, it's quite a versatile mix. If we flip the bag over, we've got a little bit of description there in 4 different languages. Obviously English is on there, as you'd expect. Pro Natural Bream mix will bind well and break down fast. Ideal to carry lots of feed particles like maggots, casters, worms, hemp, corn and pellets. So it's telling you it's pretty good at binding. Alright, so you're learning quite a bit off the packaging on here. There's nothing much else on here. There aren't any mixing guidelines or anything like that, but we do have a bit of a batch code there as well. Okay, so that will help you distinguish how old it is if you see it on the tackle shop. But it's a mix that I've used a lot. Like I said, I've used it on its own quite a bit, but I have mixed it with other ground baits in the Pro Natural range. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to mix this up. You can see the colour. The packaging has got a nice window there, so you can see what sort of colour it is. It's almost a brown crumb, a slightly darker brown crumb colour, and I'm expecting there will be quite a bit of crumb in here as well anyway. So what I'm going to do is get the bowl now, we're going to mix it up, and what we're going to do is just see how flexible and see if we can overwet it, see if it binds pretty well, and see what kind of feed particles are in there, and then we're going to test it in the tank. So let's get some mixed up. Okay, nice and easy to open. We've got to get the first hit. Brasem. I absolutely love the smell of brasem. I think they tend to use it a little bit more on the continent than what we do, but we used to use it, you know, ever such a lot here in the UK. I'm not going to mix too much, but you can see the colour of it there. It's a nice light colour. It's fine. As you can see, it doesn't look like there's much feed in there at all. So, you know, which is going to be good. I mean, I'm a big fan of fine ground baits, or ones that haven't got too much feed in them, because I like to feed the fish with what I'm putting in as regards the particles in there, because if you think you're feeding too much, you can simply cut them out or step them up accordingly. Whereas if it's already built into your mix, you haven't quite got that flexibility, because if, you know, just by filling the feeder with ground bait, you're actually feeding them as well. So let's get some water in. Like I say, this is not a fish meal mix, it's cereal based, alright? So if you're thinking of going out and trying it, it'll be interesting to hear what sort of venue you've tried it on and what the results were, you know, whether you're caught or not. The reason why I don't use too many cereal based mixers here in the UK is because quite often we're on commercial venues, and on commercial venues we tend to find that, you know, you've generally got to have some sort of an element of fish meal in your mixers now. You know, it's just a UK thing. However, I do know people that have mixed this with fish meal mixers as well, and I've done that on the odd occasion. I haven't done that for a couple of winters, to be honest, but that's because I'm fishing different venues now. So yeah, so you can mix fish meal with this to get, so you'll have a kind of a sweet fish meal type mix. So that's why mixing ground baits can be, you know, it can be fun to try them out, you know, because you can make your own versions of what you feel you need for that particular session. So as you can see, it's gone quite a bit darker now, as ground baits do when you add water to them. Alright, and what I'm going to do is, just like I've done with every ground bait in this series, I'm going to give this exactly 10 minutes just to give it a chance to absorb some of that water, and then I can add a little bit more if need be. Like I say, when you're mixing ground baits, just add water little and often, don't rush them, you don't want to spoil them. They're not cheap to buy, so you don't want to go wasting it right at the outset. So I'm going to get that 10 minutes and then we'll come back to it, and then we'll try it in the tank and see if it binds and if we can over wet it. Right, well that's been 10 minutes now, so as you can see, it's just about right. There aren't many lumps in there, to be honest. I expected more lumps in there. I haven't mixed this with a drill because I know most people don't use drills, and I want to keep this as middle of the road as you can possibly make it. So I know most people mix their ground baits by hand. Very few lumps in there, which is nice to see, because it just means it's not quite as important to sieve or riddle your ground bait. I always do it anyway, just to make sure. But obviously, the less lumps there are, the easier it is going to be to work through a riddle. So that's a bonus. The smell of brasem has really come through now. You know, it's really sweet. It's almost that, well, it's Bream. It's brasem. It's caramel type of flavour. Smells beautiful. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just add some water to it, just to see if we can over wet it. So what I'm going to do is, before we over wet it, I'm just going to see what it binds like. Now there's no stickiness there. I'm not feeling any stickiness there. However, as you can see, we're getting a little bit sticking to your hands, but it's not like the oil. It's not like the oil. Some of the oilier mixes that you get, and that's binding pretty good. It's not. I wouldn't want to bind that on its own. You know, if I was going to bowl it in on it with balls of ground bait on the pole like you do on some venues, I don't think, not on a deep venue anyway. I mean, that's holding pretty good. You know, on venues that might be 8 feet, 10 feet, but if you're going deeper than that, I might want to put something else with this, just to make it, you know, bind a bit better. Pro Natural Dark, something like that. So it binds okay. Like I say, I mean, you could probably see that squeezes into a ball all right, but it does break up quite easy, and it does say that on the packaging that it just break down quick. So that's again something that we've learned. What I can try now is, let's just see if we can over wet it. What you'll generally find is that with most cereal mixers, you are able to over wet it. For those that don't know about over wetting, it's just giving the ground bait a different kind of you know, a different effect when it hits the water or when it goes into the water. A lot of people fish sloppy ground bait when they're fishing with a pole. So if that's the, you know, the kind of way that you want to fish, sometimes just putting a sloppy ball of ground bait in can trigger bites, and obviously some ground baits will be more suited to that than others. As you can see from this one, you can probably hear that. This one is, you can over wet it. And I think that's been pretty much the same for just about all the cereal mixers that I've ever used. But obviously this series may highlight any that don't. So we can over wet it, so that's good. So it's a nice versatile mix. It's gone quite a bit darker actually than the actual mix itself from when it, you know, when we look at it through the bag. I mean, that's the colour of it unmixed. So it has darkened down quite a bit, but I think this is just worth pointing out that this ground bait does have a dark version as well. So there's Pro Natural Bream, which is this natural type colour, but then there's Pro Natural Bream Dark, so there is a dark version of this, so you can still have that smell of brasem, everything, all these same qualities, but in a darker version, which, you know, as most people know, will probably be more suited to venues with clearer or clearer water conditions. So so that's a nice option to have in the range as well. So we know we can overwet it. We know it binds pretty good. It's not oily. I mean, you can probably see my hands there and what's coming off there. That is not oil, that's just wet. Well, you can see it's not oil, that's just wet. Okay, so it's not an oily ground bait, this one. So that's probably why it breaks down so quick, or quicker than some other mixers. So what I'm going to do now is just pop the dry mix in a feeder, and we'll have a look how it reacts under the water, and then we'll also have a look at what kind of cloud comes off it when we overwet it. Well, there are lots of ways of introducing ground bait, and like I say, you could bowl this in with a pole, you know, and I'm sure it'd be very good for that. Like I say, because of the binding, I probably wouldn't use it in mega deep water, but it does bind okay. For this demonstration, all I'm going to be using is a cage feeder, just so we can have a look at how it reacts underwater, just to see if there are any particles coming off it and how quick it actually breaks down. I'm using just a cage feeder. This is the new Matrix one, and it's just got really fine wire mesh on it, so hopefully that's going to allow the water chance to get to the ground bait really quickly. So I'm going to squeeze this in the feeder that I would say, I don't know, to a medium consistency, or medium pressure, if you want to call it that. Okay, so it's not really fluffy, but that would certainly be enough for a decent cast and to get it down in an average depth water. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just pop this in the tank, and we can have a look at how it's going to react once it's on the bottom. Excuse me. Well, there we go. As you can see, there's already quite a lot of particles coming off that. This has only been resting 10 minutes. All right, I've said it before in the other videos, I would normally have mixed this as soon as I get to my peg, or the night before. Cereal mixers generally travel better, so you can kind of mix them the night before without the fear of them going off. And you know, they do keep a little bit longer, cereal mixers, than some fish meal mixers. So as you can see, it's not actually breaking down that quickly. I have squeezed it in quite firm, but there are particles coming off it, rising up, as you can see, coming up to the top. Like I say, if this had been resting for, say, an hour, for example, a lot of those particles that are coming off may have been, you know, they would have soaked up more of the water, so they wouldn't be fizzing off like that. But there isn't too much. There is some coming off, but not as much as what I'd expected, actually, because this is it's almost a little bit like a crummy type mix. So there are slightly bigger particles in here than a lot of the fish meal mixers that we use very often here in the UK. But there you go. I wouldn't say there's much of a cloud coming off that at all. There's virtually nothing of a cloud. Okay. And that's what it is. It's designed for bottom feeding fish. It's designed for bream, so you want it down on the deck. I think if you rested this for an hour, 2 hours, it would be, you know, a lot more inert than that. There's still the odd particles coming off it, but as soon as that started breaking down, it's broken down pretty quickly now. It's coming out of obviously both ends of the feeder, but it's just sitting there on the bottom, ideal for, you know, bottom feeding fish. So all I'm going to do now is just move the feeder out of the tank and just see if it kicks off any sort of a cloud. Okay, there's lots of particles there, as you can see, but oh, there is a bit of cloud come off it. Yep. It hasn't spread too much though. It's not like some of the other mixers that we've looked at this week, where they've really clouded up the tank a lot. Yeah, there's not much cloud come off that at all, certainly not in comparison to a lot of the other mixers. And that's probably because a lot of you know, some of these particles are a little bit coarser than some of the, you know, the really fine fish meal mixers that we've looked at so far this week. So what we'll do now is we'll just try a bit of overwetted mix just to see what kind of cloud comes off that. And this will just show us if all those coarser particles will just hit the bottom and release any sort of a cloud. Nothing. There's virtually nothing come off that as regards the cloud. You know, the bit of cloud that you're seeing there is it's what it's disturbed what was already on the bottom from the feeder that was in there. As you can see, that's just inert. That's just virtually, there's nothing coming off that, which kind of backs up what I said about these particles when they were fizzing. When they were fizzing off when I put the feeder in, then obviously this wet section of the ground bait, this wet part of the bowl, has obviously had a little bit longer to soak, and it's had more water put on it as well, and that's exactly what's happened. You know, there aren't any particles coming off that because it's just, you know, those particles are nice and they've soaked up. Well, that's been really interesting just to have a look at that. I didn't really expect that. I expected a little bit more of a cloud coming off from that ground bait, but obviously not. Like I say, I've used this quite a lot on its own, but I've also used it probably just as much with other mixes like the Pro Natural Dark. Now that's the kind of mix that we use in Ireland on lots of natural venues. Bait Tech is a company that you're probably very, very familiar with, and they have stores that sell their products up and down the country, all over the place, you know, and I'm sure you probably already know where you can get hold of these sorts of mixes. If anybody out there has used this particular mix, please comment below and let other viewers know what your experiences are of this mix. And if you are a retailer, or you work in a tattle shop, or you know a tattle shop that sells this mix, then please comment below just to let other viewers know where they can get a hold of it. As regards the credibility of it, it's a mix I've used now for about 3 or 4 years. We used this for 4 years on the trot when we fished the World Pairs in Ireland, myself and Richie Hull, and we also used it on the mix when we ended up 10th overall, and I was 3rd individual in the Daiwa Cup on the same event as well. This was the mix that we used in conjunction with Pro Natural Dark. We tended to, as we knew we needed Bream later on in the week, on the Thursday and Friday, because we were chasing weights, we tended to put more of this into the mix than the Pro Natural Dark, just because we knew we needed Bream, and certainly I was off to venues that held Bream, and thankfully I drew on some and caught them, and this was a key part of that trip. But we've used that in Ireland. Like I say, it's not a fish meal mix, so if you know any sort of venues where you're going to be needing cereal mixes, where you're catching smaller fish, where you're catching roach, where you want to catch perch, gudgeon, any sort of species like that, and obviously skimmers as well, and bream. Now, like I say, you've got the lovely brasm smell in this mix, and I have used this mixing it with other fish meal mixes to give it kind of a watered down fish meal mix, but a sweeter one. Alright, so you know, you can play around with this sort of mix. It's really quite versatile, as you've seen. Now, as regards the actual cost, now these actually come in 1.5 kilo bags, and the average price that I've seen online for these is $4.99, and I'm sure, you know, those prices are pretty much the same in the tattle shops, because the prices I've seen online are the tattle shop advertising prices, so they're tattle shops that sell product online as well. So about £4.99, which for 1.5 kilos is pretty good. Well, it's been really nice to revisit a mix that I haven't used for a while. I'm sure I'm going to be using it again in the future, depending on the venues that I'm heading off to and the style of fishing that I'm going to be doing. But if you have had any experiences with it, please comment below and let us know. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this insight into this ground bait mix. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does make a difference, and it lets me know that you want to see more videos like this. I've got so many other videos to show you. If you don't want to miss out on any of the future videos, please hit subscribe just there. And if you want to see more in-depth coaching style videos, then you might want to have a look at my other channel, Patron TV, which is at the link just there, and at the link in the bottom left hand corner. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow for another fresh video with a completely different mix.